Welcome to Sprinkle with Hope podcast. This is your host, Jason. And today we're going to be talking about a crucial subject, communication. How we can communicate better, just some ways of doing that.
Communication is so important. I'm going to share a personal experience of how communication is really important and knowing the content of your next podcast.
Welcome to the Sprinkled with Hope podcast.
This is Jason.
And this is Shane.
And it's podcast time.
A few weeks ago, in one of our episodes, we talked about commitment. And today we're going to talk about communication. Now, I want to come clean and let everybody know that I had this great stuff prepared for communication. And as we were going to start recording for commitment, Jason's like, wait, hold up, Shane. We're not talking about commitment today or communication today. We're talking about commitment. So today we're going to talk about communication. So I think I'm on the right page today. To me, communication is more than just words. It's more than what we say. It's how we say it, the tone of our voice, when we say it, why we say it, the intent behind what we're saying, and what we don't say. A lot of what our communication is our body language.
Yeah, and so I'm going to start out here with 5 barriers that I think that kind of are barriers to communication. And one is judging another person. I've talked about it before, and judging other people, that's really difficult. And that's going to be a barrier to communication. If you're automatically judging them, they may not want to listen to you. And so that's the first barrier. The second one is not paying attention to the person you are talking to. How many times are we thinking about something else? Oh, I got a Facebook feed I got to hurry and look at, or whatever it is. What is really taking us away from communicating with that other person? Third thing is using technical language. Look, I'm not super smart, so when you use technical language with me, I may not understand it. So sometimes you have to dumb it down for me a little bit, and get down to their level, right? If you're saying a bunch of stuff that they may not understand, that communication is not really going to happen very well or very good. And then fourth is giving solutions or unwanted advice. So, maybe that person doesn't really want to have your advice or hear about what solution you have for them. Maybe they just want you to listen. And then the last thing is avoiding the concerns of others. I think when you aren't really engaged in what it is the other person wants, that's definitely a barrier to communication.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking as you were sharing that, how often are we talking to someone and they're on their phone or computer or something, and we think we're talking to them, and then they look up and go, are you talking to me? Like, that's so frustrating. Yeah. If I'm talking to you, I just want you to be engaged and focused on what I'm saying and not your phone or this or that. Relationships are so much more important than that little moment we have on social media or whatever we're doing, that we really should put our phone down and focus on the person. We should literally turn our body and face them, have eye contact. That's something truly that I am still learning. I've gotten good feedback that when I communicate with people, sometimes I don't look at them in the eye enough. And so that is something that I'm aware of. I'm working towards being a better communicator in that way. Winston Churchill says, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. And I loved that quote. I thought it was really good, that it really does take courage for both to stand up and speak and to sit down and listen. And so we're going to talk about things that we can do that will allow us to be better communicators.
Oh, I love that quote, Shane. And I totally agree. One of the things that I have was to listen twice as much as you speak. Listen with your whole body, your whole spirit, your whole soul, whatever it is that you have. Listen twice as much as you speak. If we did that, we'd actually learn something. I had this quote that I shared, a couple weeks ago on our Facebook group. That's when we're talking, we're already saying something we already know. But when we're really listening, we can learn something. And I believe that to be true. I have a quote here by Ralph Nichols, and he said, "The most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and be understood. The best way to understand people is to listen to them." So I think as you're listening to whoever it is that's talking, we can really learn what it is that they're saying. We can understand and be understood.
Yeah. I work really hard to not judge anybody, whether it's appearance or what they're saying. And I think we should all do that. We should listen without jumping to conclusions. That really is listening. We shouldn't interrupt them and impose our solutions. If, let's say we're talking to somebody and we interrupt them and say, what we're saying in that instance is, "Hey, I'm way more important than you are, buddy." That's not what we want to tell people. We're saying, you know what? I don't really care what you think or say. I don't have time for your opinion, those type of things. We would never actually come out and say those things vocally to people, but often we say those things if we interrupt them, if we're not focused on them, that the phone we're holding is more important than the communication that we're having with that other person. So I would just encourage each of us to focus a little bit more when we're having a discussion and not interrupt and say those things without saying words. Like I had mentioned before, to me, communication is a lot more about what we're not saying, and it's more about what we're doing. So how we're acting and our body language and those type of things.
I love that you brought that up. It kind of ties into what I was going to talk about next, which is nonverbal communication, because it really is key, and I totally agree. Sometimes we can be unaware of the messages that we're sending, right, nonverbally. Nonverbal signals include tone of voice, eye contact, facial expressions, and even silence, right? Sometimes we're just quiet. Well, that's also sending a message, right? And we clue in on those. It's that nonverbal communication is a large part of how we are interacting with another person. I mean, if you see their eyes roll back in their head, or whatever it is, they're more worried about their phone or whatever, that's not really showing us that they care to listen to us, want to listen to us. So I might as well just stop talking, right?
Yeah. Yep. I think we need to really feel speaker, what our other, what the person we're communicating with is really feeling. Have you often wondered, if I'm talking to somebody and they are sad, am I feeling sad, or am I just like, yeah, okay, whatever? If they're really happy, are we genuinely happy for them? Can we feel those emotions that they feel? And that, I think, is showing ourselves and them that we are 100% engaged in them, and we're focused on them, and their communication is really hitting us. I think we can do a better job at that. I'm including myself, that often when we talk, that maybe I'm not really feeling what the person is feeling, and I think we can do better. We can also give them feedback. We can say, you know what, you seem really thrilled about what you're telling me. That's great. Or, oh, what a terrible thing that you're going through. I can't imagine, how tough that might be, or things like that. I can see that you're confused. So it's telling them that you're actually hearing and understanding and feeling what they're telling you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think one of the other things too is asking questions, asking really good questions, right? As you ask questions, it kind of shows that you're interested in them, right? You're not just saying words to say words, but you're really trying to understand them and where they're coming from, whatever it is that you're talking about. If you're asking questions, you may get a whole lot of information, right? And so that's a good way. I got a quote here by Henry David Thoreau, and he said, "Could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for an instant?" And I think that's part of what communication is, right? If we could look into the other person's eyes, I watched this video just recently about this person walking through a hospital. And could you imagine all of the things that people are saying? Yes, I'm cured from this disease. Oh, no, I just found out I'm going to die tomorrow. Yeah. Oh, my dad got in a car accident and I don't know if he's going to be okay. Oh, I have, vacation coming up. Like, could you imagine if you were able to see or hear what everybody else is thinking or what they're seeing?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, I think, a big part of it is we don't understand what is going on. And so if you're trying to judge them or whatever, you're not going to get the full story. And so that's just not my thought about, in this communication topic is let's try to look and see the other person's point of view and what it is they're seeing.
Yeah. I think effective communication really is less about what we're saying, what we're talking about, and it's more about listening. And I think there's a huge difference between engaged listening and simply hearing what the other person is saying. We can hear what they're saying, but are we really engaged? Are we feeling what they're feeling? Are we giving them feedback? Are we doing all these things to show them that what they're saying really is important to us? You can tell by the intonations of the person's voice. For example, if you go back to some of our first few podcasts, we're learning, right? I didn't realize that all of my equipment was working properly, and I thought this is great. But thinking or listening back to it, we're learning. Both of us are learning. I'm also learning in order to be an effective communicator, I have to change the way that I'm saying certain things. If I'm just saying it in monotone, then maybe you're not feeling what I'm feeling. But if I change the way that I'm saying things, you're going to feel the passion behind what I'm saying. So all I'm saying is I'm learning as we're doing this podcast to be a better, effective communicator. I also believe that we all can do better at hearing and listening with intent of what the person is saying. You'd kind of mentioned a little bit about a quote that I had by the Greek philosopher Epictetus. He says, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." I thought that was so great that, here years and years and years ago, this philosopher said that. And I believe it. I really do.
Yeah, I love that quote. And I think I saw that the other day too. And it's true though, right? Is if we actually listen to what is being said, we could understand. So I had mentioned it a little bit, but one of the things we can do is be more empathetic, right? If we could look at what others are going through and see what they see, would we treat them differently? Would we really, truly think more about what is going on and really get a feel for what's going on in their life? Maybe they are struggling and, on the outside, it's all crystal clear. Everything looks great. Life is hunky dory. On the inside, they're shattered and they're broken. And so maybe if we knew what was going on, we'd show a little, it'd be a little different, right? We'd treat them differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've talked a lot about communication and what things we're saying, but I really believe a lot of it is what we're not saying, our nonverbal signs that we're giving. Imagine that there's 20 people that are standing in a circle and one person starts talking and instantly the other 19 people fold their arms. What does that typically mean? That usually means that they're closed off to what the person is saying. And so I think that we need to be aware of those nonverbal signs. Now, that doesn't always mean that if somebody folds their arms that they're just closed off to what we're saying. That's not what I'm saying. typically that means that. But they could also roll their eyes or roll their whole body or whatever. And we have to pick up on those nonverbal signs and say, hey, wait, Jason, am I saying something that is hurting you or something like that? Or what's going on? And just have that open communication. Our body language is going to tell a lot to the other person. Our face is going to tell a lot. Our gestures and all of those things, the tone of our voice, the way that we're breathing, all of these things are adding to what we actually say.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously, like when we fold our arms, right, that's kind of like a defense mechanism, right? So we are trying to protect ourselves from what it is we think we're in danger. It kind of goes back to that fearful thing, right? We might be afraid of the person that we're talking to or whatever it is. They may have, they may be our boss or whoever, right? But I think that's definitely a sign that we should probably, when I was in the Army, we put our arms behind our back so that we would never fold them. And because you're almost in a more open position when you put your hands behind your back. You're more at a vulnerable state. And I think that kind of shows a little bit more respect, like you're saying, and it shows that you're able and willing to listen to that other person.
Yeah. I think communication really is so important. And I think we have to be more aware and more focused on not just what we're saying with words, but what we're saying with our body language and those things. Take the time to put down your phone if somebody wants to talk to you. It really is way more important to listen to that person, to hear what they feel, what they're going through, all of those things. We really should do much better at communicating. So I would just encourage each of us to be a little bit more aware of not just what the other person is saying or not just what we say, but what we're saying with our body language. And it's so important to give that message to the recipient.
This is Sprinkled with Hope. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend.
If you like our podcast, please give us a review or rating.